You're chewing, and chewing, and chewing some more. It's been almost an hour. Your jaw is aching, and you've barely made a dent in the raw haunch of meat in your hands. This is dinner, and dinner is going to take most of the evening because nothing about this meat wants to be eaten. Then, at some point in your species' distant past, someone held a piece of that same meat over a fire, and everything changed. This is the story of why humans stopped eating meat raw, and it might be the single most important dietary decision any species has ever made. Because some researchers argue it's the reason you have the brain you're using right now to watch this. Let's start with a basic, uncomfortable fact. Raw meat is hard work. It's tough, it's fibrous, and your body has to burn a serious amount of energy just to break it down, chew it, and extract usable calories from it. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, spend roughly 6 hours a day chewing raw food. 6 hours. Just chewing. That's most of a workday spent doing nothing but grinding fibrous tissue between your molars, so your gut has any hope of digesting it. And even after all that effort, raw food yields fewer usable calories than the same food cooked, because your digestive system simply can't extract everything that's locked inside those uncooked tissues and cell walls. Now here's where the theory gets genuinely bold. A biological anthropologist named Richard Wrangham proposed something called the cooking hypothesis, and it goes like this. Cooking doesn't just make food taste better or easier to chew. It fundamentally predigests it before it even enters your mouth. Heat breaks down tough connective tissue, denatures proteins, and ruptures cell walls in plants, releasing far more energy per bite than the raw version ever could. Studies comparing cooked versus raw meat have found the cooked version can deliver roughly 30% more net usable calories, because your body spends dramatically less energy extracting what it needs. And that surplus energy had to go somewhere. This is where the story connects to something enormous. The human brain is absurdly expensive to run. It makes up roughly 2% of your total body weight, but it burns around 20% of your resting energy. Just sitting there, existing, thinking, running background processes you're not even aware of. No other organ comes close to that ratio. For a species to evolve a brain that costly, it needed a serious, reliable energy surplus, and Wrangham's argument is that cooking is exactly where that surplus came from. Look at the fossil record, and the physical evidence lines up in a genuinely striking way. Homo erectus, appearing roughly 1.8 to 2 million years ago, had noticeably smaller teeth, a smaller jaw, and a narrower rib cage, meaning a smaller gut than earlier hominins. And at the same time, brain size in this lineage started climbing steadily. Smaller digestive investment, bigger cognitive investment. That's not a coincidence anyone can easily wave away. There's a related idea called the expensive tissue hypothesis, which argues that gut tissue and brain tissue are both so metabolically costly that a species basically can't have an oversized version of both at once. Something has to shrink to let the other grow. Cooking, by making digestion dramatically cheaper, may have been exactly what let our ancestors afford to shrink the gut and expand the brain. But here's where honest scientists have to admit something uncomfortable. The archaeological evidence for fire this early is thin and genuinely contested. If cooking explains Homo erectus's smaller gut and bigger brain nearly 2 million years ago, we'd expect solid physical evidence of controlled fire from that period. And we mostly don't have it. The oldest confirmed evidence of controlled fire use, ash and charred bone in a genuinely contained hearth, comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dated to roughly 1 million years ago, hundreds of thousands of years after Homo erectus's body had already changed. Rock-solid, undisputed evidence of habitual, everyday cooking doesn't really show up until sites like Kesem Cave in Israel, dated to around 300 to 400,000 years ago. Hearths, burnt animal bone, the whole picture of a group that cooked regularly as part of daily life. So which is it? Did cooking cause the brain expansion 2 million years ago, with the physical proof simply lost to time, because fire leaves such fragile evidence? Or did the brain grow first for other reasons, and cooking arrived later as a separate massive upgrade layered on top. This is a real, ongoing argument among anthropologists, and nobody has definitively settled it. What almost everyone agrees on is that once cooking became routine, it fundamentally rewired what it meant to be human, regardless of exactly when that switch flipped. There's another advantage that gets less attention than the calorie math, and it might have mattered just as much. Cooking kills things. Raw meat carries parasites, tapeworms, and dangerous bacteria like salmonella, all of which can sicken or kill you, especially in a world with no antibiotics and no hospitals. Heat destroys almost all of that risk before it ever reaches your stomach. In a species where a single bad infection could easily be fatal, that alone is a staggering survival advantage, one that has nothing to do with brain power and everything to do with simply not dying from your dinner. And cooking changed more than biology. It changed the shape of daily life itself. Fire has to be tended, fed, watched. Meat has to be timed, turned, shared out once it's ready. Cooking, almost by necessity, pulled people together around a single point in the dark, waiting on something they couldn't rush. Some anthropologists argue this shared waiting, this communal fire-centered mealtime, became one of the earliest recurring social rituals in human history, long before language got sophisticated enough to call it a tradition. So the next time you throw something on a pan without a second thought, understand what you're actually doing. You're performing an act that may have physically reshaped your ancestors' skulls, freed up the metabolic budget that built the brain sitting behind your eyes right now, and quietly saved your entire bloodline from an untold number of parasites and infections along the way. Somewhere back in the deep past, someone held meat over flame for the first time, and your species has never eaten quite the same way since.